My name is Renee L. Carver. I'm 34 years old. If you'd asked me a week ago what my favorite sound was, I probably would have said kids laughing in the backyard. That sort of high, wild, sugar-fueled joy that makes everything feel lighter. The kind of sound that was filling my yard last Saturday afternoon when my son turned 8 and told me at least 12 times it was going to be the best birthday ever. We'd spent the morning hanging streamers and taping up crooked balloons. He'd insisted on helping, standing on a dining chair to stick blue and red ribbons to the fence, tongue poking out in concentration. "It has to look cool," he'd said. "Everyone's going to see it." "It already looks cool," I'd told him. "You made it." He'd blushed at that. He always does when you compliment him. He's not like the others in my family. He doesn't puff up or brag or turn it into a joke. He just absorbs it like sunlight and keeps going. By 2 o'clock, the backyard was full of life. A handful of kids from his class, a few cousins, my friend Sean, his godfather, setting up the Lego set he'd brought on the patio table, cheap paper plates, pizza boxes stacked in the corner, a sheet cake with crooked handwriting and way too much frosting. It wasn't Pinterest perfect, but it was ours. Lucas, my son, kept running back over to me, cheeks red, hair sticking up from the static of balloons, whispering, "This is awesome, Mom," before sprinting away again. When my parents finally pulled up, they did it the way they do everything, late and theatrical. Their car door shut with that heavy, deliberate sound. My mom climbed out first, smoothing down her blouse like she'd been dragged into something beneath her. My dad followed, holding a gift bag that looked like it had already lived a full life at someone else's retirement party. Creases in the sides, gold foil letters half peeling off. My brother Mark came in behind them, his wife balancing their 2 kids and a phone in one hand. None of them looked at the decorations Lucas had worked so hard on. None of them noticed the way he was practically vibrating by the gate waiting for them. "Hi, honey," my mom said vaguely, leaning in to kiss my cheek like she was arriving at a brunch. Her eyes skimmed past Lucas like he was a neighbor's kid. My dad lifted the bag. "Here," he said, and held it out to my son without bending down or smiling. "Just here." Lucas, because he has manners and because I've raised him that way despite everything, took the bag carefully with both hands. "Thank you, Grandpa," he said softly. He was standing in the middle of the yard, whole party swirling around him. Kids yelling, music humming from the Bluetooth speaker, the smell of pizza and frosting in the air. Everyone's eyes turned toward him as he peeled back the tissue paper. 2 pairs of plain gray socks. No superheroes, no patterns, no note tucked inside. Just socks, folded neatly, bland and adult and utterly unfitting for an 8-year-old boy's birthday. For a second, there was this weird, suspended moment where nobody quite processed it. Even the kids went quiet, staring like they were waiting for a punchline. My dad supplied one. "The worst gift," he announced in that booming voice he saves for opinions, "for the worst grandson." He laughed. My mom laughed. Mark laughed. His wife laughed. It wasn't a little awkward chuckle either. It was the kind of laugh adults do when they think they've nailed a joke. It took me half a heartbeat to realize nobody else was laughing. Sean's face went still. One of the other moms glanced at me with wide eyes. 2 of the girls looked down at their shoes. Lucas didn't laugh. He stood there holding those socks like they were something fragile and dangerous, eyes flicking up to his grandfather's face, searching. Looking for a hint that this was some weird kind of game. That any second someone would shout, "Just kidding," and pull out the real present. No one did. My dad took a sip from his drink, still smirking like he'd said something clever. My mom said, loud enough for me to hear, "Well, not all kids can be winners," and nudged Mark like they were in on some secret. Mark shook his head. "He's so sensitive, just like his mother," he said. They all nodded, as if that explained everything. My son's shoulders drooped almost imperceptibly. It was small, but I saw it. I feel every inch of him when he hurts. He looked down at the socks again, then carefully put them back in the bag and set it down on the patio table. He didn't say anything. He just turned around, walked past the pizzas and balloons and the Lego set, and disappeared through the back door into the house. No one followed him. No one called his name. They just went back to filling their plates and talking about gas prices and some show they were binge-watching, as if they hadn't just publicly humiliated an 8-year-old on his birthday. I sat there frozen, watching this scene I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't seen it. The edges of my vision got strangely sharp. The sound of my parents laughing, Mark's stupid quips, the scrape of forks, it all blurred into static. They didn't respect my son. It hit me with a clarity that almost knocked the wind out of me. They never have. To them, the grandchildren were scoreboard pieces, medals, grades, goals, trophies. My niece, who plays soccer and racks up goals every season, golden. My nephew with the spelling bee trophies, golden. Easy to brag about, easy to parade. But Lucas? He's quiet, sensitive. The kid who remembers your favorite color and makes you a card with glitter glue and 3 misspelled words because he wants you to smile. The one who'd rather read than shove. The one who apologizes when someone else bumps into him. That wasn't good enough for them. And when my father called him the worst grandson, they didn't just punch down at a child. They took a swing at me too, at how I choose to raise him, at the fact that I'd rather have a kind boy than a cruel winner, at the way I refuse to mold him into a version that makes them comfortable. I could feel something hardening inside me, a line drawing itself in ink where pencil used to be. I didn't explode. I didn't stand up and scream or throw their plates into the grass, though a small feral part of me wanted to. I waited. 20 minutes. 20 full minutes of listening to their conversation roll on, of my mom making some comment about kids these days, and my dad chuckling like he was wise instead of cruel, of Mark muttering something about dramatic types while his own children sprinted around the yard, knocking cups off tables. I counted them by songs on the speaker. After the 3rd song ended, I stood up. I walked into the house, through the kitchen, past the trail of party debris, and up the stairs. Lucas's door was half open. I knocked lightly and pushed it open. He was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, the half-built spaceship from earlier in front of him. He wasn't crying, not loudly anyway. His face was tight, the kind of tight that comes when a kid is trying to be brave so no one calls them a baby. "Hey," I said softly, sitting down beside him. "You okay?" He shrugged. "I'm fine." He wasn't. I picked up one of the tiny Lego pieces and rolled it between my fingers. "Do you want everyone to leave?" I asked. "We can end the party early if you want. We can just hang out with Sean and your friends." He thought about it for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Yes," he said. His voice was small but steady. "I don't want them here." That was all I needed. I kissed the top of his head, got up, and crossed the hall to my room. Opened the desk drawer. Pulled out the folder I'd prepared 2 weeks earlier but hadn't actually planned to use. Not until now. Inside was a copy of Mark's lease agreement, with me listed as guarantor, and a letter I'd drafted and signed. The letter was short and to the point. Effective immediately, I will no longer be responsible, financially or otherwise, for your rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance, or any other recurring expenses. This is not temporary. This is final. My name at the bottom, black ink. No room for misinterpretation. I'd written it one night after paying his rent for the 12th month in a row, listening to him complain on the phone about how kids are expensive, while I scraped coins out of my console to buy my own son a field trip ticket. I hadn't meant for today to be the day I used it. But then again, I hadn't planned on them calling my child the worst grandson either. I went back outside, folder in hand. The sunlight felt harsher now, bouncing off the folding tables. My family was still sat around, plates half empty, voices too loud. I didn't clear my throat or call attention to myself. I just walked up to Mark and dropped the folder on the table in front of him. He frowned. "What's this?" "Open it," I said. He flipped it open, eyes scanning the first page. His face went from annoyed to blank in 3 seconds flat. His hand tightened around the paper. "What is this supposed to mean?" he asked, though he already knew. My dad squinted. "What's going on?" My mom leaned forward. "Renee?" No one laughed now. I didn't give a speech. I didn't justify myself. I didn't remind them that for over a year, I'd been wiring almost $3,000 a month into Mark's life so his wife could stay home and he could figure things out without ever actually figuring them out. I turned and walked back into the house to my son. The party, as far as my parents and my brother were concerned, was over. They just didn't know it yet. The air outside was thick with confusion when I left my family at the table. Conversations didn't even trail off. They simply died, like someone had hit a mute button. I didn't care. I closed the sliding door behind me and walked straight to Lucas's room. "Hey, sweetheart," I said softly as I sat beside him on the carpet. He didn't look up. He was clicking Lego bricks together with precise, careful hands, the way he always did when he was trying not to feel something. I touched his shoulder gently. "Do you want me to ask everyone to go home?" He hesitated. Then he whispered, "Yes, please." That was enough. I kissed the top of his head. "Okay." And for the first time in my adult life, I made a decision entirely for us, with no thought to what my parents or my brother might think. I walked back to the yard and stopped at the head of the folding table where my family sat. "The party's over," I said. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. My dad blinked. "What? Are you serious?" "Yes," I said. "You need to leave." My mom scoffed like I'd just told her the earth was flat. "Honey, you're upset. Let's just come—" "You need to leave," I repeated. "Now." My brother was still staring at the papers in the folder, like they were written in a language only the damned could read. My sister-in-law murmured something to him. Maybe say something. But he didn't. He just sat there, realizing for the first time what a life without my wallet would look like. Only Sean and the kids' friends stayed. They were the only ones who actually came for Lucas. Everyone else shuffled away in stunned silence. My mom tried one last attempt at emotional CPR on her way out. "This was just a joke," she insisted. "You're overreacting. He wasn't even crying that badly." Not even crying that badly. It was miraculous how quickly a sentence could turn my blood cold. I didn't say another word. I just held the door open until they left. Once the yard was empty of everything that had ruined the afternoon, I went back to Lucas's room. He was still on the floor, still building, but when he looked up and saw only the kids he invited and his godfather outside, I swear his whole body loosened. "Can we still have cake?" he asked softly. "Absolutely," I said. We lit 8 candles. He blew them out. His smile wasn't as bright as it had been in the morning, but it was real, and that was enough. For the next 24 hours, my phone was mercifully quiet. Then the storm arrived. First came Mark. Call 1, missed. Call 2, missed. Call 7. Call 11. Voice note. Another voice note. I didn't listen at first. Not until curiosity won. His messages were a beautiful blend of rage and panic. "Renee, what the hell is wrong with you? You're blowing this up over socks. You're ruining my kids' lives because you can't take a joke. This is insane. You owe me a heads up before pulling support." A heads up. 14 months of covering his rent, utilities, car insurance, groceries, and unexpected childcare costs. And he believed I owed him a heads up that his free ride was over. No, I didn't owe him anything. I deleted all the voicemails. Then my mom tried texting. "Mom, can we talk calmly like adults?" I didn't answer. An hour later, "Mom, your son wasn't even crying that badly. You're making this into something it's not." Then a paragraph. "Mom, we didn't mean anything cruel. He's just not like the others. He needs to toughen up. You shelter him too much. It wasn't personal." I stared at the screen. They called him the worst grandson. On his birthday, in front of a yard full of kids, and laughed. Lucas walked away humiliated. Not one of them followed. Not one asked if he was okay. And my mother had the audacity to tell me it wasn't personal. What they didn't realize was that Lucas wasn't the only one they'd insulted. They'd insulted my motherhood, my choices, my values, my gentle boy they never deserved. No, it wasn't personal to them, but it was deeply personal to me. The following week, the consequences started snowballing. Mark attempted to transfer money to his landlord. He couldn't even cover a third of the rent. That evening, he left another voicemail. "You can't do this. I have 2 kids. You should have warned me. Be an adult and talk to me." I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, but because I'd already been the adult for too long. 2 days later, the landlord called me. "Hi, Ms. Carver. Just confirming you're withdrawing as guarantor for Mark Carver's unit?" "I am." "Are you sure? There will be an eviction process at the end of the month." "Yes," I said, "I'm sure." He sighed a heavy, empathetic sigh. Understood. I hung up and went to check on Lucas. He was lying on his stomach on the floor, spaceship now fully assembled, making those soft whooshing sounds kids make when they think no one's watching. The light from the window hit his hair just right, making it glow like copper. He looked up at me and grinned. A small, honest grin. Somewhere in the chaos of the past week, I realized something. My son smiled more in moments without my family than he ever did with them. That alone was worth every severed tie. 2 more days passed, then came the knock. I opened the door to find my parents standing on my porch, stiff and uncomfortable, like children waiting outside a principal's office. Mom spoke first. "We're worried about the family falling apart," she said. "You're letting a childish misunderstanding hurt everyone." I didn't invite them in. "Do you remember what you gave him?" I asked quietly. She blinked, confused. "What?" "Socks," I said, "plain gray socks. And you called him the worst grandson on his birthday." She shifted, eyes darting to my dad for backup. "Renee, you're being emotional." "I'm being a mother," I corrected. Dad cleared his throat, stepping forward. "Do you really plan to leave Mark and his kids without a place to live?" I didn't blink. "That's not my problem anymore." Mom scoffed. "Do you expect us to pick up the slack?" For the first time in the entire conversation, I smiled. Calm, sharp, certain. I didn't answer. Their silence felt heavier than their words. They left without hugging me, without apologizing, without even pretending to understand. Good. Understanding wasn't needed. Distance was. By the end of that week, Mark's eviction notice was official. His wife texted me from a strange number. "We have nowhere to go. Can you please help just for the kids?" I didn't respond. They could go live with the best grandparents ever. The same people who mocked my son and called it humor. The same people who clapped when Lucas opened socks and pretended cruelty was comedy. Let them all stick together. They'd earned each other. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to save them from themselves. When Mark and his family officially got evicted, you'd think someone would have had the decency to tell me. Not because I wanted updates, God knows I didn't, but because they'd always treated me like the family's financial first responder, like I was supposed to be part of every crisis, every meltdown, every self-inflicted disaster. But this time, silence. No calls, no texts, no tearful voicemail from my mother claiming, "We can fix this if we talk like adults." I found out the same way the rest of the extended family did, through a cousin's Instagram story. A boomerang video, something stupid and glittery, with Mark in the background dragging a trash bag full of clothes up my parents' driveway. One of the kids was holding a tangled tablet charger like it was a lifeline. My mother stood on the porch, directing traffic with that strained but proud look she reserves for moments when she thinks she's performing sainthood. The caption read, "Family sticks together." I didn't laugh, I didn't cry, I didn't comment. I just screenshotted it, set the phone down and thought, sticks together like gum on the bottom of a shoe. Because that's what it was. Not unity. Adhesion. A sticky, unwanted mess no one knew how to remove without tearing everything around it. They'd moved in 3 days before the eviction date. No warning, no message, not even a smug, "We figured it out without you." They just slid into my parents' lives like an overdue bill. And they were proud of it. For the first week, my mother acted like she was starring in a Facebook drama called Saint of the Year. She rearranged the living room, posted photos of the air mattress propped between two end tables like she was unveiling a charity project. She captioned one photo, "We do what we must. Family first." Not a single mention of the person who'd been paying their rent for 14 months. Not a whisper of the daughter whose silence forced them to acknowledge reality. Nope. In her version of events, she and my father were the heroes, the saviors, the benevolent grandparents stepping up in a time of crisis. They soaked in the attention, the comments, the praise. From the outside, it almost looked noble. From the inside, a pressure cooker. The first cracks appeared 2 weeks in. Picture this. Mark, unshaven, sitting on my parents' couch in pajama pants, a gaming controller in one hand and a half-eaten bag of chips in the other. His 2 kids tearing through the hallway like small tornadoes, arguing over a tablet. My sister-in-law sprawled out scrolling TikTok, earbuds in, disappearing into the algorithm. And my parents, the same people who once judged my housekeeping skills because Lucas left Legos on the stairs, were drowning in chaos they absolutely invited. My father started snapping at everyone. My mother started stress cleaning every surface in sight. And still, not once did they admit what everyone else could see. They had unleashed a nightmare they could not manage. But instead of confronting the problem, they turned back to their favorite coping mechanism. Me. At first it was subtle. "Mom, do you know any affordable grocery delivery services? Things are a little tight with 4 extra mouths." Mark. "Hey, do you know how government benefits work? Just curious." Curious, right. Then it got bolder. My dad called late one night, voice heavy with what he thought sounded like reason. "We've taken them in, but this isn't sustainable long term. Maybe you could help out just a little? For the kids, they're innocent." I took a breath, a deep one. "I already helped," I said. "Renee, be reasonable." "For 14 months," I continued calmly. $3,000 a month. Rent, groceries, insurance, utilities, everything. While they all laughed at my son on his birthday. He went silent. "This is different now," he muttered eventually. "You're right," I said. "It is." And I hung up. By week 4, things inside my parents' house hit full meltdown. Not that they told me that. I heard it through Erica, my cousin, the family's unofficial historian. "Your mom called my mom sobbing," she said, not bothering to lower her voice. "Apparently your brother is a nightmare to live with. His wife doesn't help with anything. The kids are wild, and your dad's about to lose it." I said, flipping through a cookbook. "Tragic." She also said the house smells like stale peanut butter and despair. Accurate. But the part that hit hardest wasn't the drama. It was when Erica repeated what my mom had cried into the phone. "We should never have treated Lucas that way. This is karma." Good. Let them taste it. A few days later, my sister-in-law texted from a number I didn't know. "Hey, we're feeling a little overwhelmed here. Do you think the kids could come visit? They miss their cousin." The audacity made my teeth hurt. I didn't respond. Instead, I showed the message to Lucas. He looked up after reading it, thoughtful, then shrugged. "They're only nice when they want something," he said. 8 years old. 8. And he already understood emotional manipulation better than the adults who weaponized it. I kissed the top of his head. "You're right," I said. And that was that. But the real explosion, the one that made everything unravel, that came in week 6. A full police cruiser, parked in front of my parents' house at midnight. Erica called the next morning. "You're not going to believe this," she said, voice buzzing, with the kind of stunned amusement only family catastrophe can evoke. "But the cops were at your parents' place last night." My heart didn't even jump. It just exhaled, like it had been expecting this. "Why?" I asked. "Oh, everything," Erica said. "Bills overdue, internet cut, your brother blaming his wife for not job hunting, wife blaming him, kids screaming, your dad trying to break it up, your brother screaming that you ruined the family, loud enough for the neighbor to hear." "Of course he did," I muttered. "Neighbor thought it was domestic violence," Erica added. "Police showed up, made a report, and since minors were involved..." I closed my eyes. "CPS, I guessed?" "CPS," she confirmed. "Someone made an anonymous report. They showed up this morning." Not me, not anyone on my side of the family. Just a neighbor who saw the truth. A house drowning in its own dysfunction. CPS didn't remove the kids, but they did make it clear. This living arrangement was not stable. There would be follow-ups, there would be oversight. For the first time in their lives, my parents couldn't guilt-trip their way out of consequences. For the first time in his life, my brother couldn't charm or dodge responsibility. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being asked to fix it. I was watching from a distance, holding on to the quiet truth that had carried me through the chaos. I didn't set this fire. They lit every match themselves. CPS showing up at my parents' house should have been the moment everything snapped into place for them. A moment of clarity, a reckoning. Instead, it was the moment they realized their usual tricks, guilt, denial, rewriting history while looking you straight in the eye, were useless against an agency that does not care about family theatrics. And when manipulation stops working on the world, people like my parents start circling back to the one person it used to work on. Me. 2 days after Erica told me about the visit, my phone buzzed with the longest message my mother had sent in months, broken into multiple texts because she can never just write and edit. "Mom, Renee, honey, we've all had some time to reflect. We know emotions have been high. It's time to come together again as a family. We're willing to discuss reworking our arrangement." Reworking. Arrangement. As if I was a subscription service that paused unexpectedly and needed to be restarted. And then buried in paragraph 3. "If you can resume helping financially, we'd be open to discussing future inheritance matters." Inheritance. My parents had just gone through police intervention, major household dysfunction, and a CPS evaluation. And they genuinely believed I could be coaxed back into the chaos with the promise of imaginary future assets. They were offering me their house like some kind of grand prize, conveniently ignoring the fact that 1. Their house now had a police report attached. 2. CPS was checking in regularly. 3. The house smelled like peanut butter and despair. I didn't reply, which meant it was time for their next tactic. Show up uninvited. It was a Thursday morning when it happened, 10:30 a.m., sun filtering through the curtains while I cleaned cereal off the counter. Lucas was in the living room, humming to himself as he worked on a puzzle. A knock sounded at the door. A soft one. Not urgent, not frantic, just expected. I peeked through the peephole. My mother stood on my porch, holding a Tupperware container of banana bread like it was a peace treaty. "Your favorite," she said when I cracked the door open. I hadn't mentioned liking banana bread since I was 14, but she said it like she expected the nostalgia to melt me on the spot. I didn't open the door further. I didn't take the bread. Instead, I asked, "Why are you here?" She sighed dramatically, an actress in a play where she's the misunderstood matriarch. "We're in a difficult situation," she said. "Things at home have been hectic. The kids aren't adjusting well. Your brother still hasn't found work. CPS is breathing down our necks, asking questions, scheduling follow-ups." I didn't flinch. She continued, each sentence more careful than the last. "We'd like to revisit the possibility of you helping out again. Helping out. That phrase. Like I'd been spending 14 months wiring nearly $3,000 a month to Mark's household because I wanted to be generous. Like it wasn't survival money that should have gone to my son. Like I had been helping instead of single-handedly keeping an entire family afloat while they laughed at us. Then she said the line that nearly made me choke. We talked it over, and if you help again, we'd be comfortable giving you partial control over some future family assets, the house or investments. Investments, plural. The house with the CPS file, the retirement fund my father borrowed against twice, the investments they always bragged about but never showed anyone. I looked at her and finally felt it. Not anger, not pain, but amusement. You're offering me fake inheritance money, I said, so I'll support the people who mocked my son and ruined his birthday? It's not about money, Renee, she snapped. It's about keeping the family together. Which part? I asked. The part where you insulted my child? The part where you called him sensitive? Or the part where you all laughed when he left in tears? Her face tightened. I didn't come here to fight. Then why are you here? I asked softly. She hesitated. The weight of the question pressed hard against her pride. To ask for help, she said finally. For the kids. They're innocent. I nodded. Yes, I said, they are. She blinked, hopeful for half a second. And that, I continued, is exactly why I'm not helping. Her face fell. How is that helping them? Because if I step in again, I said, nothing will change. Your household stays chaotic. Mark stays unemployed. His wife stays detached. You stay overwhelmed. And those kids grow up thinking dysfunction is normal and consequences don't exist. She opened her mouth, closed it, drew in a trembling breath. Renee, please. I shook my head gently. No, I said. Figure it out yourselves, or keep waiting for a miracle that's not coming. Then I shut the door. She didn't knock again. That night, Dad called. He never calls. He hates the phone. If he's calling, it's serious. When I picked up, he didn't yell. He didn't guilt trip. He didn't sigh theatrically like my mom did. He just said quietly, "We need your help." Silence hung there between us, crackling like old wires. He took a shaky breath. We didn't realize how much you'd been doing, he said. Not until it stopped. We thought Mark just needed time, but he's not stepping up. And his wife, she's not coping. The kids are out of control. The house. He broke off, voice tight. It's a disaster, Renee. He rarely sounded defeated. It was almost unsettling. And then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it. We were wrong about Lucas. My heart stuttered. Dad swallowed audibly. We thought teasing him was harmless. We thought it would make him stronger. But we see now it hurt him. We see that now. I closed my eyes. Finally, the truth. But not nearly enough. Renee, he said softly, please, just until we get back on our feet. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't erupt. I just said, I think you should ask your favorite grandson. And I hung up. The next morning, a plain white envelope appeared in our mailbox. No return address. Just Lucas's name in my mother's loopy cursive. Inside was a small handwritten note. We're sorry we hurt your feelings. We miss you. Hope you forgive us someday. Lucas read it once, shrugged, used the card as a bookmark. He didn't ask what it meant. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't carry it with him the rest of the day the way he used to. He'd already let them go. And honestly, so had I. 3 months. That's how long it's been since I shut the door, literally and figuratively, on the people who spent years expecting me to save them from themselves. 3 months without late-night calls demanding money. 3 months without Mark's just until payday lies. 3 months without my parents telling me Lucas was too sensitive, too sheltered, or not like the others. 3 months without being anyone's emergency exit. 3 quiet, steady, peaceful months. And peace, when you've lived without it long enough, feels suspicious at first. Then it starts to feel earned. Then it starts to feel normal. The first thing I noticed was how much money I actually had. It sounds ridiculous, but when you spend years in a constant state of financial triage, rent for your brother, groceries for his kids, insurance for their cars, birthday gifts you resent paying for but do anyway, you stop noticing your own needs. You stop seeing yourself. The first month that $2,900 didn't disappear into Mark's rent, I took Lucas to buy a bike. Not a fancy one. Just one with flame decals on the sides and chunky black tires he'd always stop to look at when we passed the sporting goods store. He rode it for 2 weeks straight, sometimes in circles in the driveway until he got dizzy and fell into the lawn laughing so hard his stomach hurt. That sound, pure, unfiltered laughter, was worth more than every payment I ever made for my brother. Not long after that, I opened a new bank account. I called it the Fun Fund. Every time I didn't bail Mark out, I put a little money in that account. Every time I didn't cover groceries for my parents, I added more. Every time I said no to a guilt-laced request disguised as family loyalty, I made a transfer. It added up fast. The second month, during dinner, chicken nuggets for Lucas, leftover pasta for me. I looked at him and said casually, "You want to go to Disneyland?" His fork dropped on the plate, just fell right out of his hand. His eyes went wide, then wider, like I had told him we were moving to the moon. "Are you serious?" he whispered. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "Just the two of us." He launched across the table and hugged me so hard, I almost toppled off the chair. We went the next weekend. Not a fancy trip. I booked a cheap hotel a mile from the park, packed snacks so we wouldn't spend $50 on popcorn, made a spreadsheet to keep it affordable because old habits die hard. But none of that mattered. Lucas hugged Spider-Man, ate 3 churros, went on the Star Wars ride twice, fell asleep on my shoulder during the fireworks, sticky with sunscreen and joy. It was the first time in years I cried from happiness, and the first time I realized how much life we had missed because I was too busy supporting adults who refused to support themselves. Meanwhile, my parents' house was imploding. I didn't speak to them, but Erica, my cousin, unofficial family reporter, filled me in with the kind of fascinated horror usually reserved for soap operas. Mark still hadn't applied for a job. His wife barely spoke to anyone. The kids tore through the house like tiny hurricanes. My mother developed stress shingles. My father moved to the basement for quiet, which was laughable in a house with 4 extra bodies and 2 screaming children. At some point, they tried to apply for government assistance, but because Mark refused to cooperate with CPS and kept missing appointments, the application stalled. The house was in chaos. Bills overdue, electricity flickering, neighbors complaining, CPS scheduling more check-ins. And through all of this, no one called to apologize. No one admitted they'd hurt Lucas. No one acknowledged what they'd done at the party. But they all agreed on one thing. It was somehow still my fault. Then my aunt called. "You know," she said cautiously, "now that everyone's learned their lesson, maybe it's time to revisit the arrangement." I laughed. Actually laughed. "My son learned his lesson too," I said. "That not everyone who shares your blood deserves a place at your table." She didn't call again. About a month later, something arrived in the mail. A plain white envelope. No return address. Just Lucas's name in my mother's looping cursive. Inside was a single $5 bill and a hand-drawn heart. That was it. Lucas looked at it for a moment, confused. "Can I buy a candy bar with this?" he asked. "You can buy 5, I said. He slipped the $5 into his pocket and went back to playing Minecraft, utterly uninterested in the emotional undertones adults wrap around everything. He didn't ask why she sent it. He didn't ask if he should reply. He didn't even keep the card. He didn't need closure from people who didn't value him. He already had peace. Our life changed in ways I didn't expect. Lucas started wanting to go to the park more. We visited the beach twice, took a road trip up the coast, ate way too much ice cream, started a nightly ritual called Rose and Thorn, where he tells me the best part of his day and the hardest part. His roses started growing, his thorns started shrinking. Last week, he asked if he could learn piano. I bought a secondhand keyboard off Facebook Marketplace and signed him up for lessons. He practices every morning before school. Soft, uneven notes drifting through the house like proof that our world is healing. And my phone? Quiet. Not ominously quiet, not guilt silence quiet. Peaceful quiet. A silence that doesn't mean someone is waiting for me to fail them. A silence that means no one is draining me dry. My parents tried to control everything. The narrative, the drama, the finances. But in the end, they lost the only thing they never thought they would lose. Access. To me. To my son. To the bank of emotional and financial labor they had treated like an entitlement. And the best part? They did it to themselves.